What if I told you that the most dangerous manipulators never raise their voice, never show their hand, yet control entire lives with a smile? In this chapter, we peel back the mask. You're about to discover the subtle, chilling techniques used to influence thoughts, bend decisions, and twist reality without anyone realizing it's happening. Are you ready to see the world for what it truly is? Chapter 2, Secrets and Strategies of Dark Psychology. The methods and secrets used by the power of the world to conquer cultures and nations are included in these pages. Although the previous chapter provided you with a theoretical deception, work for dark psychology, these concepts are put into practice in this chapter. It's as straightforward to break into someone's mind as using the power of words, but you do need to know the correct words to use. That is why it is primarily a matter of practicing your vocabulary to learn how to use dark psychology in real life, so it can open up the mind of someone else. There are countless methods to learn, but in fact, you only need a few to break into the mind of someone. Let's start off. Good people follow the first of 3 important steps for successful persuasion: mind control and mind reading. You need to know you are in control of yourself before you do something. You need to know that whatever the subject does would not negatively impact you. You might be shocked at how difficult it is to do this. There is a fair risk that you will crash into a wall until you finally get ready for your first attempt at breaking into someone's mind. This wall is the way you are emotionally, verbally, behaviorally, and more influenced by the subject. You won't be able to break into their heads if the subject affects you. If this happens, they are the ones getting into your mind. Scientists who research the brain or neuroscientists now understand the explanation for this. In our minds, this comes down to a particular kind of neuron called mirror neurons. Mirror neurons were discovered in an accident when neuroscientists were examining chimps. The way they function is actually effortless. Considering how many implications mirror neurons have, the neuroscientists scanned 2 individual chimps' brains. When this unique neuron, the mirror neuron, began to fire into their brain, the first chimp was carrying a banana. How the other chimp blends into the photo are an interesting aspect. The other chimpanzee itself did not hold a banana. They merely watched the other chimpanzee hold the banana. But despite this, the very same special neuron shot. This led to the accidental discovery of mirror neurons by neuroscientists. Mirror neurons are now understood as the neurons that allow our brains to imagine actions, whether they are real actions that we are doing or only actions that we imagine. What makes mirror neurons so amazing is that we don't really have to do something to get the same response from our mirror neurons. They'll shoot either way. You may extend this to a multitude of things. Our mirror neurons go off as if we are reading chips when we read a novel, and the character eats chips. The way our brains understand the meanings of things is through mirror neurons. Scientists are postulating that we have evolved to mirror neurons in order to plan for the future. We may not be doing an action right now, but when we watch an action, our minds are planning to actually do it in the future. The function of mirror neurons is this. Now you have already found out how this already relates to mind control and coercion, because it can still begin to affect you. When you see the subject being emotional, it feels like a social force that makes us want to get along with them emotionally. While social factors undoubtedly play into it because of neuroscience, we now know that the research that contributes to this happens in the brain. Not only do we feel socially forced to communicate feelings in reaction to people in our lives, but our mirror neurons are firing in response to the actions of the person. Even if they are the ones doing the behavior, our mirror neurons are firing just as theirs are, and you are just experiencing it. That's what makes it so difficult to control ourselves in the manner that is required to become competent in mind reading, mind control, and manipulation. There is a neuroscientific and biological process that leads us to be affected by them. But we don't want to accept being influenced by our subject, as we said. We are expected to manipulate them, and that's when it comes to state power. State management is the first skill you have to master if you want to succeed in these dark psychology applications. Essentially, at any moment, it is your right to convey whatever feelings you need to feel. It is your ability not to be impacted by the mirror neurons of strangers, but to be able to select what feelings you express at any moment instead. For you to learn, it is the first ability because it prevents you from being the focus. You see, they expect us to be affected by them when we communicate with individuals. if not all the time. By listening to the advice of other dark psychology books, don't go about learning state power the wrong way. By giving them the false impression of state power, they confuse readers. State regulation, for one thing, does not mean you stop feeling emotions. State regulation means being able to manage your thoughts, and this is far from the same thing. And when we say that, to avoid being affected by the issue, you should use state regulation, that doesn't mean that you should never react in a way that would be typical of normal social interaction. In reality, much of the time, you can find that in the same exchange. You can always express feelings as the average person would. The distinction that state control makes is that it allows you the right to choose when and how you emotionally respond. You should react in the socially anticipated way most of the time, and sometimes you shouldn't. It all depends on how you can balance walking the line between matching the brain of the subject's wavelengths and manipulating your objectives. We'll be talking more about this later, but back to state power for now. As we said, state control, regardless of the emotional stimulation surrounding them, is often wrongly thought of as one's ability to display no emotion. But since this is the most valuable emotion to communicate, it is really one's ability to express any feeling at any time. You can't hope to do this by doing the way you usually would all the time, when you want the subject to do something or change their beliefs. Sometimes, depending on what advantages the attempt at coercion or mind control benefits, you may have to adjust your own emotions. The toughest part of state control is that you could do so at any moment on purpose. To learn some capacity to control your thoughts, you don't have to research dark psychology. In fact, we have no choice but to get better and better at this ability. As we grow up and become adults, to learn to become part of society, it can help you see that it is possible to fully replace your natural emotions with a new one by understanding that you have already mastered how to temper your emotions. You know now why it matters to state power, so how do you achieve it? Something called anchoring is the solution. Anchoring has a long range of uses. It is also a tool you can use in mind control and manipulation. However, in the sense of state power, it is the tactic you use at any point during your relationship with the subject to take command of your emotional speech. By tapping into your imagination, the process of anchoring helps you to do this. As adults, we sometimes make the mistake of thinking about creativity in childhood as something to be left behind. When we read a book or watch a TV series, the more open-minded amongst us may see it as something reserved for. But the fact is, creativity goes far beyond our lives in these places. Imagination is how the solipsist in us would assume that, amid all the contradictory evidence around us, we understand the universe most of the time, which may make us doubt that. Don't underestimate the force, even as an adult, of imagination. Anchoring depends strongly on creativity. The fact that Aristotle suggested using creativity as a way to remain on track, to accomplish our goals and do the things we claim we want to do, is one thing that might redeem the definition of imagination for you. And what he proposed was anchoring, in essence. Aristotle said that in your mind, the day before you do a job, imagine doing the task. In order to achieve the mission, don't only imagine completing the task in general, but instead, imagine all the little tasks you would have to do. Aristotle said that if we were to do this before bed every night, we would really do the stuff we imagined we were doing the next day. This is because we have already seen it in our brains, so it stops us from being intimidated the way we would generally be. It is not so different when we use anchoring to accomplish state power. The biggest difference is simply because it can be very difficult to manipulate a person, so we have to put a lot of stuff into the anchoring to be prepared for a variety of circumstances. To get started, pick one feeling that you want to be prepared to convey at will with your face. First, think about a time when you really felt this sensation, and do your hardest to remember how that feeling actually felt. Keep doing this with all the critical feelings until, at any moment, you can call an emotion you want to feel and show it on your face. The last move is exactly the same as what was said by Aristotle. You now have all the feelings at your hands, so think about all the different directions your attempt could go as the subject could be exploited. For all of these opportunities, react with the required emotion. You can't be prepared for every single little thing, of course. It will build your confidence, though. And you're not going to be so discouraged that you're not going to try, and even if things come up that you didn't expect, you were prepared for other things that happened, so you're not going to be overwhelmed. You will have more of a cognitive load to be ready for it, and you will respond accordingly. Anchoring is not the only way of achieving control of the state. You should try other helpful approaches so you can see which one suits you best. The simplest form of all is deep breathing. We feel more comfortable because we have more oxygen in our bodies, and our brains also function better. Sadly, it's normal for individuals to assume that deep breathing is only breathing more slowly. But that's not what it is. You feel the air moving deeper into your body as you breathe deeply. If you can sense the air going as far in as it can go, don't let yourself believe that you are deep breathing, hence the term deep breathing. This state control approach does not assist you in conveying particular emotions such as anchoring, but often the most complex part does not respond to the emotions expressed by the subject. And this is most useful for that. When you do this, the other important thing to remember is not to breathe so loudly that you look suspicious. You don't want your subject to ring any warning bells, because if they notice you're breathing loudly, they'll still be suspicious, though they probably won't suspect. You're trying to influence or manipulate your mind. No matter what stimuli you are given, the last technique for learning state control will help you remain calm. There is more than one way to learn how to suppress your emotions while you are interacting with others. But this one is the easiest to practice at any time, any place. The definition of an actor breaking character during a scene is probably familiar to you. This suggests that the actor felt that another actor's line or gesture was so amusing that they came out of the scene and were about to laugh. What you are trying to learn is basically very close to not breaking character when you learn state power. The character you play is the individual who does all the right things for you to get the data you need from the subject or to influence or exploit them, regardless of your objective. With this mentality, either go through online videos or look at comedy options on any streaming platforms that you may have. Make sure you find something most of the time that will really make you laugh. By watching these without laughing, you can exercise state regulation or not breaking character. For learning state regulation, this is a very great exercise. No matter how amusing the scene or actor is, the final aim should be to look like a brick wall. Suppressing a joke from your laughter is not precisely the same thing as not showing feelings, no matter what the subject offers you, but they are practically the same. You have to accept the same sensory data that most days will make. You respond in a certain way, and you have to choose not to react to it. Anchoring will also help you get stronger with deep breathing and this exercise. The first of 3 stages of effective mind control and manipulation is state control. It is also the most important move. Because as we have said, if at any given time you cannot choose how you display your feelings, you are the one who is affected. You can't claim to have any control over them as long as you give up this power to the subject. As we move along in the book, we will get into steps 2 and 3, but as you read on, note this important fact. Steps 2 and 3 are where the mind control and conditioning strategies come in. With these methods alone, though, you won't be able to pull off reasonable attempts. They are not like recipes for cookbooks, where you simply follow the instructions in the correct order and get the desired outcome. Before you can succeed with them, you will need to have basic skills like state control. Speaking of which, before moving to steps 2 and 3, there is one more important skill that you must master before using the techniques we will soon teach you. Perceptual sharpness is called this ability. The other half of the first level of mind control and manipulation is perceptual sharpness. It is a concept that is not unique to the field of dark psychology. In virtually any skill you can think of, whether you are thinking about cooking, repairing stuff, healthcare, academia, and much more, strong perceptual sharpness is useful. This is because it means that all perceptual sharpness is how powerful the senses are. The more you see, hear, smell, taste, and feel, the better you have perceptual acuity. First of all, with all of your simple senses, you can determine your abilities. Have you ever been advised that you have an outstanding sense of smell? Are you capable of finding objects quickly by touching them? Do you instantly know when a celebrity you know is a TV voice actor? Does your eye automatically catch tiny details where in the first place most people will never even recognize them? Perceptual sharpness can be a good skill to have no matter what discipline you study, but it is particularly important in dark psychology. You have to be able to pick up a lot of data quickly while you are in conversation with the subject. You see more details about your topic you can get, the better. The quicker you can get the results, the better. Your senses are essentially the most effective resources at your disposal. They are your way into the world beyond the world in which you and your subject live. You may be used to going through life without worrying too much about the contents of your surroundings. But that must end today. A big reason not everyone can learn dark psychology, after all, is that they miss all the tiny details. You can't help but note the little details when you have good perceptual sharpness. That's why perceptual sharpness is just as vital as regulation of the state. You definitely need control of the state, so you don't become the one who is mind-controlled. But what will give you the advantage is your perceptual sharpness. Early on, it will make you privy to data that the subject never believes you know in the first place. The more you know that you know without thinking about the issue, the better. And the strength of our perceptive sharpness comes at the end of the day from the wealth of experience that it can provide us. Not just any details. We are talking explicitly about information relating to the subject. In engaging with the subject, the most important thing you can do at any stage is to collect more information about them. The more of them you know, the better. However, at the same time, you don't want them to know that you're constantly and actively searching for information about them as a person. Fortunately, perceptual sharpness makes it possible, so we don't have to sneak around for that data. People send us information without really thinking about it all the time, and with perceptual information, we will naturally absorb the data. In combination with another talent that is something of a buzzword lately, perceptual sharpness works with active listening. Nowadays, they say active listening is uncommon, but the fact is it's always been rare. Because of our understanding of dark psychology, we know to the degree that individuals are all solipsists. We care a lot for ourselves, and for the most part, we care just for the world beyond ourselves in terms of how it applies to us. We use this to our benefit as learners of dark psychology and manipulators. All we have to do in a casual conversation is get people to chat. Ask questions that give you the data you need. Just make sure that you do it in a way that seems casual and unassuming. This is how you get away with gathering as much information as you can about the subject. Like we said, as a manipulator, this is the biggest way you can support yourself. Get more information about the topic. A vital aspect of active listening, however, is auditory sharpness. Over the decades, several writers have told us that instead of only engaging in the dialogue, to hear ourselves talking, we need to do a better job of listening. But how can we be effective with active listening? Instead of tuning out the way people prefer to do, how do we retrieve and recall the details the subject gives us? Sharpness in vision. This is the key to effective listening actively. Think about how you should adapt these methods to the sense of active listening. When we delve through the ways in which you can maximize your perceptual sharpness, since this is where your objectives would be most beneficial. First, answer the first hurdle of achieving strong sensitivity of perception. This barrier does not make it a target in the first place. That means you can, as a priority, go through all your experiences with your senses. This involves interactions with individuals other than the subject, as it is the only way you can get into the habit of doing it. It requires consciously asking yourself the habits you find in the subject. To resolve this first hurdle, how do they make use of body language? Just get detailed. How far are their feet apart? Have they got a calm posture? Are they breathing slowly or rapidly? But this is just the first impediment. The next one is to consciously stop doing this. Without talking to yourself, you want the senses to do this by themselves. Without you standing in their way, the senses actually do a better job. We instruct you to consciously tell them what to do first so that, first of all, you become capable of listening to your senses. Yet, you want to stop getting in their way until you are used to listening to your feelings. Stop overthinking the data you get from your senses, and simply take in all the data you get. In a novel, this may sound weird, all about something as profound as dark psychology, mind control, and coercion, but you have to turn your brain off to get to the highest degree of perceptual sharpness. You don't want the senses to put more effort into it. You don't need to. Without you involved at all, the senses automatically do their work. Passively accept the data they supply you with and let that be the end of it. When you hit this level of perceptual sharpness, both jobs will be easier. You will be prepared to penetrate the subject's mind and do what you please from there with state regulation and perceptual sharpness working together. To this end, you can read on to find out more about using dark psychology. Now that you've seen how deep manipulation runs, the real question is, will you spot it or fall for it? If this chapter opened your eyes, then the next one will sharpen your mind even more. Tap next to keep listening, because understanding dark psychology isn't just knowledge, it's protection.